Hello, I'm Jacob from Greyd, and today I'm going to take a look together with you at conversions. We're going to take a look at how to build a beautiful looking, really well converting form. Then we're going to include that with a pop-up on your page. We're going to take a look at stats, how to send those forms to different interfaces like MailChimp, for example. And last but not least, we're going to take a look at how you can customize your website based on your user. So you can display different elements for different users based on the data you actually know about them. So let's dive right in. In the last video, I explained to you how you build a site like this. We built this site entirely with patterns and everything that was already there in just a couple of minutes. And now we're going to take a look, build a form, include it into the website with a pop-up. And for that, I actually already prepared a form in here. We have this nice little image tiles over here where you can, where the user of my website can actually select what they want. So imagine you are an agency, for example, and you have different types of offers based on what your client needs. So I want to make sure I get all the information I need, and I want to make sure to get it in a visual way. So I use my image tiles for these. You can see image panels in here. Image panels is a really good way to have like a intuitive way of selecting options instead of having like a drop down, for example, where it's kind of hard and always has an extra click. It needs an extra click for the user because he has to click on the drop down, then the drop down opens up and click on the next option. And also, not all the options are visible from the get-go. So we use image tiles for this, and as you can see, we have a multi-step container in here set up to have like a form that actually has a progress indicator down here. You can see that in the backend preview as well. You can see now here we have a progress indicator that really nicely gives our user a sense of, okay, I'm making progress, I really want to finish this form. And what we now need, we need at least, I want to include a third option, so a third image panel to actually include like the runtime of the project that my client probably wants to have. And last but not least, I want to get the data that my client provides for me. So yeah, let's just do that. First, I want to quickly just add a new step. There we go. We have this last step in here. We have this paragraph. Let's actually just copy those blocks from here, go to the paragraph and paste it using Command V on Mac. And now we have the same options in here. I can get rid of that next button. And now instead of wanting to know how much budget did you calculate, I actually want to know, okay, when is your deadline? That's what I want to know, and I want to make sure, okay, I rename this form field to deadline, and let's make the first option ASAP. I want to get rid of the value. I don't necessarily need a value in here because the fallback is always the label stripped down. All the non-conformative characters are actually stripped down, so that's actually the default. Let's make it 2 to 6 weeks is the second option, and the third option is 6+ weeks. And let's select different icons. So I already uploaded some images here. So for the first icon, I want to have this little clock. For my second icon, I want to have more like a calendar type with this check mark. And for the last option, I'm gonna select this calendar. So let's just make sure we have our options or values correctly. Let's just make it 2 to 6. ASAP is okay. I'm just filling this in to make sure that all the options are correct. Okay, now we have the values and we have named the field properly. We have this step set up, and now we need another step to actually get the data of my user. So first of all, I want to include an input field, and with that input field, I want to collect the first name of my user. So let's just name it like that, first name, and make sure it's a text field, field name, first name as well, and make the autofill first name and make it required. And now we can duplicate that. Just I'm sorry. Now we want to duplicate that. And let's make it last name. Make sure we rename the field, make a last name. All right, that's good. And afterwards, we want to collect the contact information. So I need an email here. So let's make an input field again. Let's make a type of email this time. Also name it email. Select the autofill to email. And yeah, also name it email, select the label. Now I want to make sure that I have nice placeholders in here. So let's just fill some in. So placeholder usually should be like an example of what you can fill in here. So Jane Doe, so make it jane.doe@company.com. So this is a nice example of what the user should insert in this field. And yes, those are fine, but now I want to get rid of my next button, and I want to have a submit button. Let's make this 100% white. Submit email. All right, this looks fine for now. Let's update this. So we have all the steps. Let's just wait until it's updated and then just like quickly go through the steps to make sure everything is right. What do you need? How big is your company? How much is your budget? When is your deadline? And then the information. I want to make sure that I collect the information as the last step, so the user already has a feel of progress, and he or she really wants to has more incentive to actually submit the form now, and they already put some effort into giving you all the data, and now it is easier for you to get a good conversion because those first couple of fields are really intuitive to click. But the last ones are kind of like, okay, I still have to do that. But at that point, they already made so much progress that it's more likely for them to actually fill out the form. So I'm happy with that. But we haven't actually included this form on our website. So let's make that first. Let's go to pop-ups. And let's create a new pop-up. I wanna create. I can select a preset here. I want to select the slide-in preset and create the pop-up. All right, and now we want to edit it. Let's just quickly wait until the data is loaded and this nice looking preview is ready for us to be customized. So yeah, now we have a preview of our website as well. And yeah, first of all, I want to pretty much get rid of all my content in here because I don't need it. I want to have a headline, request an offer today. That's what I want my user to do. Make it a bit smaller. And afterwards, I want to select my form that I've created. I got the get offer form. That's the one we've just customized. So yeah, it looks a bit different in here because it's actually made for the preview on my website, but that's okay. It's okay for now. And we want to go back to the pop-up and actually style the layout. So first, this position down the bottom right corner is all right. I want to make it a little bit bigger. I want to make the padding actually, let's select the EM for this. 2 EM on each side, but let's get rid of the bottom one. The space, 20 pixels everywhere is actually fine for me. And let's take a look at the design. Background color, I actually want to make it white, clean as possible, and extended. There I want to, recreate a page overlay as soon as the pop-up is in view. I don't want to make a blur effect because that can cause performance issues on different browsers. So I don't want to do that, but then I want to increase the opacity of my overlay actually. So yeah, that seems about right. Let's take a look at the animation. Yeah, that looks beautiful. Okay, so let's we have created and styled and created the layout of the pop-up. Now make sure that we trigger the pop-up whenever we really want to trigger it. And we have a lot of options here. We can trigger it on page load after a couple of seconds delay. We can trigger it on scroll, which is what I want to do right now. On an activity, I can also combine those different values. Exit intent, so as soon as the cursor kind of leaves the browser window. I don't want to do that right now. You can always trigger it by a button, it's described over here. As soon as you include a button somewhere on your website, you can always select this pop-up specifically. And that way it is rendered on that site automatically. And as soon as somebody clicks that button, it is automatically opened. The pop-up is automatically opened. Let's just make sure to show it everywhere pretty much. We can also include rules as well. So for example, I can only show this pop-up if my user only visited 3 pages or more, depending on different URL parameters, which is comes really handy if you, for example, wanna show a pop-up for a different type of Google campaign, for example. So you can include the UTM medium, UTM campaign, whatever, and by that just showing the pop-up to different kinds of campaigns. Depending on the previous page, so where the user is actually coming from, is he coming from Google or some other place, from your own website or not. Certain user groups, if you configured and use them, certain times in the morning, afternoon, custom time format as well, depending on device, which is really necessary if you're really handy, if you, for example, want to highlight a different price in your pop-up depending on the device. For example, Apple users can maybe pay a larger price. Depending on the browser as well. So you have a lot of options, and then extended options as well, where you can set hashtags in URL to make sure you can track the pop-up. I don't want to do that right now. So let's just publish the pop-up for now, and we're gonna take a look at our website and how the form actually looks on our website. So let's refresh this site. And let's scroll down because we selected 50% of the page, and there we go. The pop-up showed up, and now we can go ahead and select the values. And actually, you will notice that I haven't really mentioned it, but these steps automatically go to the next step as soon as I select one of the options. And why is that? That's because in the multi-step container, I check this go to next step automatically, and that pretty much, as soon as every form field of a step is filled out, it tries to go to the next step, which can fail, obviously. If somebody inserted invalid data or something, then it fails and it displays a little pop-up to the user that he or she has to fill this out correctly. So let's just go through this, and we haven't actually included a margin here. I've seen that in the display in the backend as well, but it doesn't really matter too much right now. Let's just fill in my data and click submit and see where it goes. Okay, beautiful. That is submitted successfully. Yeah, actually I got rid of the margin bottom, and this is kind of where this led me to. So we can make some adjustments. First of all, let's make the layout 2 EM on each side. 2 EM on each side. Update that. And then go to the form and make sure the submit button has a margin top. Update that as well. So the pop-up is already updated. The form will be updated in a second. And let's take a look again just to see what actually changed. So I need to scroll down. There we go. Okay, that's what I meant. So now, I've gone there, and the submit button looks way better now. Let's just get some different data in there to differentiate my entry, and there we go. This looks way better now. Your data was submitted successfully. So we successfully created a form inside a pop-up. I just want to quickly highlight some of the features that you can actually do. So with the form, you can customize what happens afterwards. So by default, this just generates an entry and sends an email to the admin. But of course, you can change that. For example, you can send the email to an admin, you can send the emails to your user that he or she maybe has to double opt in then. So this is a double opt-in mail, this is a confirmation mail. So for example, you probably know that from a lot of websites where you first get an email, hey, please verify your identity, your email, and then afterwards actually all the actions after are triggered. So the admin email only goes out as soon as you as the double opt-in is submitted successfully. So you can use all the dynamic data from the form in here. You can also send the data to different interfaces. For example, I've set up MailChimp over here, and now I can go ahead and say, okay, I want to send my budget to MailChimp. Let's just quickly reload this page to make sure we have all the data and all the proper fields in here. So go to interfaces, go to MailChimp, list is off, all right. So let's select the first name, and that's actually why I split it first and last name, because I already knew that MailChimp wants the data this way. So first name, last name, let's maybe also collect my email. And yeah, that's just to quickly give you an overview of how this is done. Update that, and now my data is also sent to MailChimp on submission. I want to just quickly fill this out to give you an insight of how this is collected. Yeah. So as you can see, the data is actually successfully sent to MailChimp. Recipient was created successfully. And if I go to MailChimp, let's just quickly log in. And I've logged into MailChimp, and there you can see the latest data, JT23, Jacob23, Tros23. That's exactly what I just filled out. So yeah, I can set up additional data as well. Everything works in here. But you don't necessarily have to send it to an interface, but you just can. We have lots of interfaces already included from the get-go. If you go to settings, you can find the basic interfaces that are included and activate them and set up your AP data. And what I quickly want to highlight some more features that are included by default, for example, statistics of all forms. And as you can see here, you can see the sum of all interactions, a number of calls, submitted forms. Let's just select the get offer form that I've just created today. So you can see how the interactions are, yeah, how many interactions were there, how many interactions per field were there. And yeah, all this data is collected, and you can see the key figures for the last 7 days. So just some default features that are inside Greyd.Forms already. So what we now want to do is we want to display different information on my website based on the user type, for example, or an UTM parameter, for example. So let's focus on this last thing. For a different Google campaign, I want to get a 30% offer in here. So I want to show a different offer actually. So how do we do that? I already opened up my site editor, and we want to focus on this last section. So the easiest way to do that actually, in my opinion, is to just duplicate this cover block first. So the first one will be the default one, and the second one will be the campaign, the actual campaign around that. So we add before, and we select a feature that is called conditional content. And conditional content has the feature, for example, to display something based on a certain condition. For example, this could be an URL parameter. So by default, there are some Google campaign parameters to actually just select. And I want to select the UTM campaign has the value of test, for example. And as soon as this has the value, then this content is displayed. So let's just fill in a paragraph and move that cover inside here. Remove that paragraph. So we now have that as soon as the value test is true, we display this one. And then we add another one before here. Also conditional content, and we do the other way around. So UTM campaign has not the value test, right? That's perfectly fine. And we want to move the cover in there. And if it has test, we want to make it 30%. And we can now change the button as well. For example, let's just make it a different kind of button, just to make it an alternate button, just to highlight that as well. Maybe we can also differentiate the text, make it this color. Okay, nice. And now we save this and we go back to our page, and what we want to see is no difference now. Did I do it right? No, I did it incorrect. Has not the value test. So by default, we now have the 30% off. So this is correct. And what I want to do now is I want to add my UTM campaign test. So I type in a question mark and then UTM campaign. Usually this is just done by Google, so you don't have to do it, but this is how you test it. So UTM campaign test, you can see an activity. So my pop-up is triggered. And as soon as UTM campaign is test, I want to make sure, yeah, it reloads and we won't go down. Yeah, just script that form and you see enjoy 20% off. So that's how you actually can customize your entire website and every single part of your website based on, yes, different information, different campaigns, different user groups. You can display some pop-ups this way. You can display different content on your website. You can adjust your dynamic templates. Yeah, I hope you learned something new and I hope you find it somehow interesting. And yeah, we see you in the next one.
For more videos and information, please visit our Help Center.